Hello and welcome back to the Expat Journey, where we have come together to help you with every phase of your expat life, from making the decision, navigating a major life change, and then finally integrating and feeling at home in your new location. So today I am joined by Charmaine, who is also known as the Canadian Wander, and she has traveled a lot and helps people with their budget when it comes to traveling, which everybody wants to know about. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So the first thing, I don't know, it's a big topic, so it might be the only one as well. But I know a lot of people have in mind where they want to move to country-wise.
Mm.
Because they've never been there or they've only traveled to one small area, they're hesitant to decide exactly on a city and commit to it long term. So they want to travel and kind of get a good feel for the different regions of a country before buying a house and settling. So, do you have any tips on how they can go about doing this where it doesn't cost them all of their savings or cost them a fortune?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the main thing about, um, the main thing that they should be doing is thinking about a way to stay there long term. So they have some time to kind of absorb the culture, absorb the language, maybe absorb the environment, and just to see if they like an area before, choosing a place and, like you said, investing all their savings and investing their life in a new in this city. So I think there are different ways that you can do long-term stay. So one of the ways that I recommend people is doing a work exchange. A work exchange is basically where you give your skills, whatever it might be. So like even a web design, a copywriting, you're helping an organization to do work, and in exchange they give you a place to stay and maybe even some food in return. So then in that way, you're kind of like spending very little, but at the same time, you're getting a chance to work with a local or work with somebody in the some organization who's in the country, get some time to really absorb and understand what it is like to live in the city while not spending a lot of money that way, because you have the most expensive things covered, which is your living and your food.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one way that I recommend. The second thing is like they can try to find work, seasonal work. Seasonal work is very popular for the summer or the winter season. So that work can differ. So like, for example, right now we're in April, and then in the summer, there's a lot of different hotels, resorts that are looking for extra help.
Yeah.
So, for example, like if you want to see what it is like to live in Alberta in the summer, then Banff is a very popular destination where you could go there and work in one of the hotels or help with one of the attractions, and really get a feel of what summer is like. And then they also have another season of winter. So if you're really scared of like, oh my God, what is winter? What is the snow going to be like in Canada? Like that's a really good way to get a feel of the country, of the city, and to see if you really want to, have snow every winter and live in that kind of climate. So those are two ways. The third way is like digital nomad visas are very popular. So digital nomad visas is like, you must make a certain amount of money, or you have a number of savings, and then you can live in a place long term. And usually those visas are like about a year or so, I think, or even like 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I think there's a couple of years, like you can choose depending on where it is. So those are some ways that you can stay there long term to kind of get a sense of the city.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like the idea of like the seasonal. And a lot of people will think like seasonal, oh, that's for like the younger generation or it's not for everybody. But you had mentioned like Banff, like going into a hotel resort or something like that. And that can actually, if you like the area and you've put your foot in the door, so to speak, it can also open doors to long-term employment afterwards as well. So do you have
Yeah. Hmm. Go ahead.
recommendations on how to find these opportunities? Like as you were talking, I was like, "Ooh, France! It would be fun to work in a vineyard for a season."
Mm.
know, but how do you find these places?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple of websites that offer seasonal job boards.
Mhm.
So they specify in seasonal work. So if you can find one of those. Also, if you just have an eye on certain organizations, I would just like look on the website or contact somebody directly, and see if you can find those opportunities. You can also look at tourism boards for those countries. So like you said, like tourism for France, like I'm sure they would talk about all the different vineyards and all the different places you can go, and like just contacting the owner, or seeing if they have a careers page. I think though that's a great start.
Mhm. Are there certain professions that are looking for this more than others?
Yeah, I mean, for seasonal work, I would say hospitality is a great one. Like I
Mhm.
said, working in a hotel, working in different resorts, sorry, looking for hotels or hostels or resorts are the easiest one. If you can also think of like different attractions that you think that are really popular. So like some like I don't know, like I'm in Toronto, so the first thing I think of like maybe the CN Tower or the museum, or Casa Loma, like any of these places will need that extra seasonal help. So
Mhm.
just thinking about like where people will need that extra pair of hands, and starting with looking at that. And so that can be really simple, like even just looking at Google search and like being what are the top attractions in the city,
Yeah.
and then looking on their websites and seeing if they need that extra help, or just contacting somebody from like the HR from there. And then I think that could really help. And then like I said, there's also like different job boards for seasonal work.
Mhm. It just got me thinking, there's the Olympics are going to be in Paris next year. And I
Yeah.
was like, I mean, who wouldn't want to work at the Olympics? But I'm sure that just the Olympics is going to have a domino effect where, all the hotels and restaurants and things are going to need more than the normal staff count. And,
Yeah, and restaurants is another one too. Like, yeah, restaurants is another big hospitality one. It doesn't have to be like hotels or resorts. It could even be restaurants that need that extra help. And like I said, like museums, different attractions. Like just having the Olympic in Paris, for example, or in France, um, it will bring in more visitors, and they will need help like everywhere, because like there's gonna be so many people.
yeah, yeah. It's like at Cannes, the film festival, the shops and, all the different boutiques and everything, I'm sure end up hiring extra people then too.
Yeah, and exactly. And festivals is another good one. Like you can work at the festival, for example. And talking about budget travel, like if you work at festivals, then you can go to the festival for free or watch a few shows for free.
Mhm.
Volunteering for those kind of things. I know somebody who does like he works as an usher for evening at sports events in Toronto, and he gets to watch like free sports events every evening or whatever it is his shift is. So
Yeah.
that's another way to just save money.
I love the way that you mentioned volunteering too, because this isn't something that we would normally think of. And I mean, a lot of people do have a budget set aside in order to allow them to travel. So for them, where they don't need to necessarily do it on a tight budget, volunteering just opens the doors to the community as well and gives you that insider's perspective of how the community is together and, help you create that social circle right from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And volunteering is a great one too, because like volunteering, you're not spending money, they're not spending money. It's like a win-win. And then in the case of like a work exchange, which is kind of like a volunteer as well, which is what I mentioned, is like, you even get free food and free accommodation. And so you're really, really living on a budget. And I know like sometimes people maybe do it in different cities. So like maybe spend 3 months volunteering in one place and then 3 months doing another place. And then that gives you a way to travel different cities, but also get to live there for a longer period of time.
Mhm. And you traveled I mean, you moved throughout Asia as well, and you taught English there. You
Hmm.
many people, I mean, everybody that's watching this speaks English, so that's something that everybody can do as well. Do you have any recommendations on how to get started into that?
Yeah, so teaching English is a really good option, is a really good way to, have long-term stay and really absorb yourself in a culture. I really like teaching English because you kind of get placed in some kind of education system, whether that is in the public system, whether that's in the private system, whether that's in the language center. But
Mhm.
you get a really good opportunity to really understand how students learn, how people work, and then also just to meet locals. So getting started with that, I think most times is if you're a native English speaker, there's a huge demand for teaching English, especially in Asia, so Japan, China, Korea, South Korea. Those ones are great. And you usually don't really need much experience. Like they usually are probably looking for fresh grad or somebody who's just really enthusiastic in working with children and teaching. But if you do want to be a little bit more competitive, there are certifications you can take, like the TESOL, the TESL,
Mhm.
teaching English for foreign languages, teaching English to people who are not the first language
Mhm.
of English. So that's a really good one. And then there are different like levels that are more that can make you more competitive as well. So like for example, I took the CELTA, which is one of the higher qualifications for teaching English. And that can make you a little bit more competitive. And that gives you also options to teach in like for example, like language centers in English speaking countries. So I could teach at language centers here in Canada because I have my CELTA.
Okay. Yeah. I actually taught English for a little bit when we were in Germany because I didn't speak German at all. I said,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it when we first moved. And I started teaching English and I ended up teaching business executives. And
Nice.
that was a great way to know the area too, because I was going in Germany, that like when a company starts, it doesn't matter how big it stays in the same area. It doesn't go. And so I would travel around to meet with the executives of various companies. And so that's a great way to travel as well. And then, learn about the different businesses and again make contacts. And I ended up developing language retreats as a result because I wanted to incorporate travel with the language learning. So,
Very cool. Yeah, and I think that's something that people should keep in mind too. Like just because you're teaching English doesn't mean you have to be teaching English to children. You could teach English to adults. And like you said, like you could specialize in something very specific, like teaching business English, where you could be working with executives or businesses or companies. So yeah, teaching a language does not mean you have to be working with a younger population. It can also be working with adults. And actually, adults is one of my favorite population to work with.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is the international language. And, with trade and exportation and everything else, it's something that it doesn't matter what country you're in, at some point, you're going to come across English.
Yeah, and I know like sometimes people really want to improve their English because they're working with different countries or they're maybe working with it at an international company where there's a lot of people who speaks different languages and the main language is English, for example. So there's many different reasons why people want to learn English, or for example, they want to move to an English speaking country or they want a higher pay. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons why people are interested in learning English.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue on finances. Cost of living
Mm-hmm.
varies greatly from country to country as well. Do you have any tips for people on how to be well prepared for what to expect in the new country?
Yeah, so I think cost of living really depends on your own lifestyle and what you want to spend, like how you want to spend your money. So like you can spend like as little as like I don't know, like some countries are so cheap to, get a burger or get some street food, it can be so cheap. But like do you eat that kind of food or do you want to dine in a small restaurant, a local restaurant. So I think it really depends based on that. So I think, first of all, of course, you can do research on what does things cost. So like, what does a burger cost, or, you know, compared to what does a restaurant cost, or even like if you want to go to a Western restaurant, what would that cost? So I think one thing is doing your research, but second of it is determining what kind of lifestyle do you want, and what is your budget for that, right? So if you know, if you want to like live like a local, and you spend the least possible, I totally think it's possible. So yeah, so I think maybe people can even like, first of all, determining, like you said, like determining how they wish to spend their life, or how they wish to spend the money particularly. And then after, like maybe like when you live there, like try to figure out how much things cost. And like for myself, when I try to keep on a budget, I actually like calculated all the how much I'm spending every day. I kept track on an app. I like everything I spent, I put it on my app and see how much I'm spending. So then I just have an approximate money, how much my approximate budget per month. So if you get the opportunity to like live there for a couple of weeks or even a month, like I said, for long-term living, then you would know after the first month. You'd be like, okay, if I, you know, buy bread every morning, that only cost me €3. And then I eat, I don't know, I eat at a nearby cafeteria at the office, like that's €10. And then my dinner, maybe I cook something at home, it costs about around €10 to make food. Then you know, like in a day you spent like €23. And then by the end of the month, you kind of be like, okay, this is how much I spend. So I think just keeping track really helped me, because I've lived in expensive cities. But then because I kept track with all the spending I did, I would be like, okay, every month, this is how much I'm going to spend. And then that would help me to figure out like if I have enough money every month.
So that's around food. What other expenses do they have to keep in mind?
So food. Yeah, so you're right. So I did mostly talk about food.
Which is important. I mean, I'm in France. That's the topic to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, living expense can mean how much you're spending on your utilities, your rent, your housing. I don't know, I guess even like purchasing things, like going to the pharmacy and getting medications if you need that, or, you know, getting just, I don't know, lotion and your creams and whatever you need. I mean, that could be everything. But like I said, like trying to track down how much things cost. And I think that's just more like when you're living there, you go to the local to the places, to the supermarket, or the pharmacy shop, and then figure out how things much cost. And then another thing is maybe even comparing different supermarkets or comparing different shops. Is it cheaper here or is it cheaper there? And you know, maybe it's cheaper over there, but then it's further away, and is that extra cost for you to get there?
Yeah.
So I mean, keeping things in mind, like normal living costs, but also transportation. Transportation is another one. And you know, calculating how much is the difference between maybe taking a bus versus a train, or even like buying, I don't know, like I know, like buying a Metro Pass, for example. Does a Metro Pass save you money? Like if you're buying a monthly pass, versus, you know, paying every day you're going to work or you're going somewhere else. Like, does that make sense? Yeah, so I would think like, yeah, just like comparing your prices, and seeing that. And then also like with budgets, with some of those things, like rent is always going to stay the same. So already you know like how much you're going to be spending on rent, because every month it's going to be the same cost. So you have those stable costs that, you know, the same costs that you're going to have, and then figuring out like what are the adjustable costs.
Yeah. So you've mentioned you use an app. Would you recommend starting the app before you move and kind of having an idea of your monthly expenses, and then when you move, comparing? and seeing which ones are no longer relevant and which ones need to be added?
Yeah, I mean, before you go, I mean, you can't like really spend before you go, but then maybe you could be like, this is what I expect to spend. I
I
expect to
meant like
spend.
my life right now. So like
Okay.
right now I have, I know I have my insurance, I've got my like these life expenses that
Hmm.
I seem to need. And then obviously when you move, certain things are going to change,
Hmm.
right? Like, depending on what kind of medical coverage you have, and then the currency as well. Or
Right.
do you recommend doing that? Or do you think that things are going to change so much when you're in a new area that it's not worth the effort?
I mean, I think it's definitely worth it. I mean, of course, you can track where you are now and then compare to the new city, because maybe like, I mean, it also depends on your goals too. Like, for example, if your goal is, for example, to find a cheaper place to live than where you currently are, then I think that is a great start, because that's where you could compare. Is my cost of living actually lower living here versus living at home?
Mm.
So yeah, so like if you track that, then yeah, so that would definitely help you to compare.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for these tips. Thank you for your time. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
no problem. It was a pleasure too.
Bye.